Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over some of the test kits that are my go-to testers for pool water for the test factors. And these testers are the ones I use every day out on my pool route. And I would say if you're a homeowner or a fellow pool professional, I think you can get a lot out of this in picking a test kit that you would use as a regular test kit for your home or for your pool route. Pool Service Pro, open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. So I do have the Lamotte Spin Touch, which is the Ferrari of pool testers. It does 10 test factors in 60 seconds. It has a disc with reagents in it. It spins it at a high velocity. It just gives you the reading at a rapid rate. There's some BBs in there or bearings in there that kind of agitate the reagents and with the water sample with the reagents in it, I should say. And that gives you your reading pretty rapidly. And it's a very accurate tester as long as you fill up the chamber correctly and as long as the discs aren't expired. And the reason why I'm starting off the podcast mentioning the Spin Touch is not because I'm going to tell you that you're going to need this tester for your pool route. You may need this tester for your pool route, but it's $1,000 and the discs are pretty expensive. They're probably the most expensive way to do the water testing. So I would say that if you do want to get the best test kit, you're going to, of course, pay top dollar. And what would be the use of it? I would say it's great for startups if you're doing a pool startup and you want to get accurate readings on the pH and alkalinity and the calcium hardness. It's great for commercial pools where you want to counter the health department's readings or you want to have a spot-on reading so that you can log it and show it to the health department that these are the parameters that you tested. And it's great to show off when you get to a stop and you get a new customer. You know, when you go to do the bid, you can actually take your Spin Touch back there. It has a nice black case. You look like a pool doctor. In fact, that's the name of Harold Evans' pool service before. And I think you definitely look like a doctor with the Spin Touch. But again, it's not a tester you want to use every day at every backyard pool. It would be cost prohibitive, I think, to use it, 80 times a week at every stop. So it's not an everyday test kit. And this is a podcast that I'm going over my everyday test kits. And I have that one and I recommend it. But I wouldn't say that you would want to use it on all your accounts every week. It would just get really expensive. And so it's not a practical test kit for everyone, although I do recommend it for those situations that I mentioned and probably more. I think it's something if you're going to expand and be that high-level pool pro, you definitely want to get that tester. But for everyday use, I think the default tester that most pool pros will gravitate towards is the Taylor K2005 or the K2006. Now, I've had a preference for the K2005 for many years, mainly because I'm not a big fan of the K2006 with the powder for the chlorine reading. Yes, I know it goes to 30 parts per million, and yes, I know it's more accurate. The DPD test is definitely a more accurate way to test your free chlorine and your combined chlorine. However, I find that it's just messy and time consuming, and I just never really liked it. It's just my personal preference. You may love the K2006 kit, that's perfectly fine, but I think the K2005 is just as good as the K2006, except that the reagent is a dye-based reagent for the chlorine, and so it only goes to 10 parts per million theoretically, and so it's going to be accurate to a point up to 10 parts per million, and I think it's a fairly accurate way to test the chlorine using the dye versus using the powder. And I really like the test kit because it's fast, it's accurate. You have to, of course, look at the readings because it's a manual, what I would consider a manual test kit, I guess. I guess they call it a reagent test kit, but I think a manual test kit is probably a better way to phrase it because there are automated test kits like the Spin Touch, also like the Pool Lab 2.0 and the Lamotte Color Q 2X Pro 7 and 2X Pro 9. I'll go over those also, which I think are great testers to have also in your arsenal. But the reagent test kits, of course, are the most affordable. You can buy large refills and refill the reagents at a very low cost. So for all intents and purposes, practically speaking, the Taylor K2005 is a really affordable test kit. Now, what I mean by manual is that you gotta add the reagent drops and you gotta hold it up. Usually in direct sunlight would be good, or actually outdoors. I wouldn't say direct sunlight would be the case, but outdoors with natural light, that's probably the phrase I was looking for. And then you can see the chart, or the chart that's on the plastic case itself, the plastic test kit with the tubes in it, and you can line it up and you can match the colors. And that's kind of how you use the test kit. You'll have to eyeball it and you'll get the reading. So it's not an exact science, but it's actually pretty accurate. It's been NSF approved, which means that an independent company tested it and the reagents are accurate in testing the pH and chlorine level of the pool. I don't know if the other factors were tested. I think the alkalinity was also tested, but it's a great way to test the water because, in all honesty, the Spin Touch does do 10 test factors, but do you really need 10 test factors every week at the pool? I would say no. You just need the 3 basic test factors every week, which is the chlorine, the free chlorine, maybe combined chlorine if the pool's having problems. And no, I don't do the combined chlorine test every week at every pool because it's really not necessary unless the pool is exhibiting some problems, cloudy water, an odor, maybe the customer is complaining about irritation. Then you would definitely check for combined chlorine, but it's not a real problem on my route because, to be honest with you, most people don't use their pool, so it's not something that I deal with often. And of course, in a commercial pool setting, combined chlorine is something you would test for every time you're there because that's a more prevalent problem with the bather load and the different people swimming in there. So the tests that I would do every week would be free chlorine, the alkalinity, and the pH. And you wouldn't do calcium hardness all the time. You probably would need to do it every 3 months is how I do it. But of course, every month is probably preferable. And then cyanuric acid, I usually test that at the beginning of the season, maybe sometime in the middle of the pool season. And then when I'm starting the season, the next year I'll test it again. But I don't do the cyanuric acid test very often in the pool because, again, it's not really necessary. It doesn't move much unless you're, of course, using trichlor tablets and it's moving up gradually, but that's to be expected. So it's not a major factor, in my opinion, that you're testing every week, and nor is the phosphates or the other things you would test for, like metals. So I would say that the Taylor kit, you can get away with doing the 3 test factors rapidly, and then you'd be on your way to the next pool. You may be asking at this point, where do test strips fit into this? And I would say test strips are a great way to do the readings in the pool. If you want to do maybe a reading with the Taylor test kit every 3 weeks and use test strips in between, you're definitely welcome to do that. I'm a big fan of test strips. I was in the industry when they first came out, and they were pretty horrible at the beginning. They just weren't that great. They weren't accurate, and I think that kind of stuck with them as time went on. People think test strips are inaccurate because of the first generations weren't that great, but they've really gotten very accurate. Most companies now make them. Taylor makes them. Lamotte makes them. Then you have AquaCheck, which is made by Hawk. And then you have other brands of test strips. I think they're great, and I think there's nothing wrong with using test strips. They'll give you a ballpark reading for your pH, your free chlorine, your alkalinity, your cyanuric acid. You can get the 4-way test strips, 3-way test strips, 7-way test strips. And I think they're a great way to speed up your day. You're going to get a pretty accurate reading. And in all honesty, do you really need a complete accurate reading at the pool every week? Some people say, yes, you do. You're not really a pool pro unless you're getting like an exact reading every week. But I'm from the old school where it's just not something that things don't change very rapidly in the pool. And you get to know the pools pretty well on your route. You'll know which pools hold chlorine better than others. You'll know which pools where the pH rises rapidly. The alkalinity doesn't move much in the pool unless there's something weird going on. It's going to stay within that range of, if you're at 80 or 90 or 100, it's not going to be at 150 the next week, or it's not going to be at 40 the next week. And again, the cyanuric acid doesn't change that much. Only when you're adding trichlor tablets, it'll gradually rise in that pool if you're not doing partial drains. But it's one of those things where, and of course, calcium hardness doesn't change very often in the pool. So it's not like you have to do exact testing every week, I don't think, in my opinion. But I'm an old school pool guy, and I'm of the generation where the guys are carrying the OTO and the phenol red and a little measuring tape leather pouch, and they're using that, and they're just dumping the OTO into the pool water and then dumping the phenol red, and they're kind of eyeballing it and they're like, okay, yeah, the pH is like 7.6 and it looks like there's chlorine in the pool. That's the generation that I was in the pool service. So I can understand the pushback from the younger guys who are like, oh, you need to get accurate testing and your test strips are just terrible. I just don't believe that. I think they're a great way to speed up your day. They're as accurate as they need to be. And I really like the variety of test kits that are out there. You have such a variety of different test kits to test for everything. And there's also even a test kit by Lamotte that does like cyanuric acid to 500 parts per million. So if you're like in trichlor territory like me, that's not a bad test strip to have on your truck. As far as brands, again, I'm not really particular to one or the other. I mean, I like AquaCheck. I think they're accurate. Lamotte also makes a great one. Taylor's kind of newer into the test strip market. I think the last 5 years is when they came into the market. But, you can take your pick of those. And then if you want a tester that's much more accurate than the K2005, and I don't mean accuracy as far as like the reagents aren't good, you're not going to get an exact reading. It's just that you're going to interpret that reading by looking at the color and then the chart next to it to see what it is. Same with test strips. You're going to get a ballpark on those. I think if you're looking for an accurate tester, and now all the people that were like angry at me a second ago for the test strips are going to be on my side, hopefully. But I think a photometer is the best way to get an accurate reading. When would you use a photometer? Of course, once a month would be perfect for the photometer to get an accurate reading of a pool. For a startup, new pools, the chemistry does fluctuate more than a pool that's established. Like if the plaster is still curing, the pH may rise rapidly. So you may have to keep a closer eye on that. And of course, you don't want to be using test strips at a commercial pool, an apartment complex, HOA, motel, hotel, things like that. That just wouldn't go well. In fact, there was a member of my group that was caught using test strips at a commercial pool by the health department. He got kind of written up on that, and it's definitely a no-no. You want to use a photometer only, I think, at commercial pools. That way you get an accurate reading and you can match the health department, which are probably using photometers of their own. I think there are two that are, in my opinion, the top photometers. You have the Color Q 2X Pro 7, the Color Q 2X Pro 9, and then you have the Pool Lab 2.0. Now I'll touch on the Pool Lab in a second, but let me just focus on the Color Q, the two different models I mentioned there. The only difference is that the 2X Pro 9 does iron, copper, and biguanide. It doesn't come with the tablets for those, but you can get those for the biguanide. But it does copper and iron. And I think metal testing is really important in a lot of situations. Not a weekly testing, but you should be able to test for metals in the water if you suspect something or something weird's happening to the water. Like when you shock the pool and it turns like a green color, but it's like the green tint and that's not a green pool, then you would have to test for metals. Some stains on the bottom may be metal related, so having the ability to test for copper and iron are great. And that's why I gravitate towards the Color Q 2X Pro 9 over the Color Q 2X Pro 7. I think if you're a homeowner, the Color Q 2X Pro 7 would be a perfect test kit for you. I know they make a homeowner version, and Lamotte may not be happy with me, but I would prefer you to buy just the Pro version, the 2X Pro 7, and use that over the homeowner version because it has a nice case and it does more test factors for you. So just get the Color Q 2X Pro 7, and it's great because the photometer actually, or photometer as some people say in some areas, but the photometer actually does the reading for you. It uses light rays to read the color of the reagent when it reacts to the water sample. It'll give you a spot-on reading. So if you are doing pH, you would use the phenol red that's included. And by the way, these reagents are not transferable over one brand to the other. So you can't use Taylor phenol red with the Color Q tester. You can't use the Color Q phenol red with the Taylor kit. As far as I know, they're not compatible. At least the manufacturers say they're not. So I'm going to stick with that. And I would say that when you're doing a test for the pH, you would use phenol red. And as you're adding the drops, and then you hit the button when you put it in there, it's going to give you an accurate reading of 7.5 or 7.54. It'll give you a spot-on reading of the pH, which is great. And it's a great way, again, if you do commercial pools, to counter the health department and say, I just did this test with the Color Q 2X Pro 9. The pH is 7.6 exactly, and you can show the apartment manager and say, I don't know why the health department said it's at 7.0, it's 7.6, and here it is on the screen. And you can show them that, and then, that will probably get whatever, if the pool's closed, that'll get it reopened for you. And I think it's great for the free chlorine and for the combined chlorine. It's really easy to do the combined chlorine test with the photometer. You would just add 5 more drops of the reagent, and that will give you the combined chlorine reading. It does a great job with alkalinity also, and I think the cyanuric acid reading is pretty spot on, as well as the calcium hardness. And I think the photometer is as accurate as the person using it. You're just adding the reagents to it, you have the right water sample amount, and you're hitting the right buttons on it. You're going to get a pretty accurate reading. So there's definitely a place for the photometer. Would you use it at every pool, every day? I think it would be cost prohibitive even with the Color Q2X Pro 9 because the tablets and the reagents are a little more expensive than the Taylor reagents. So I would say the photometer would be a test kit I would use, every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, or even once a month if you wanted to go that long in between. And you wouldn't have to do all the readings with the photometer either. You would just do the basic readings, and you may not need to do cyanuric acid every time, nor would you have to do calcium hardness every time. I would say you could probably go 2 or 3 months without the calcium level changing dramatically in the pool. Again, if it's a new pool that's just been plastered, you'll have to do that more often because it does change in a new plaster pool, and so does the pH and alkalinity a little more than in a pool that's well established, like a pool that's 5 or 6 years old. There's not much movement in the chemistry there. If you're using the LSI, it's great to have a photometer because it'll give you spot on readings of some of the factors that are in the LSI, and you can feel confident putting those numbers in to get a good LSI reading in the app that you're using. And I think the photometers are a great tool and a great test kit. I love them, and I've been using them for years. I have all of them basically. I have the Spin Touch, I have the Color Q2X Pro 7, the 2X Pro 9, the Pool Lab 2.0, and I think the Pool Lab 2.0 is kind of an emerging tester. What I like about it, it does 3 test factors at the same time. So you can do chlorine, pH, and alkalinity all at the same time. There's 3 different chambers in it. Now the center chamber is the more accurate one, so you would want to use that one for single testing because it has 3 or 4, I can't remember. It has more of the wavelengths for the photometer than the outside chamber. It's not a big deal, but you can do 3 test factors at the same time with the Pool Lab 2.0, and the tabs are pretty affordable, so you can use this as an everyday tester if you wanted to. And I think that if you listen to this podcast, you understand that I use a combination of testers. So I'll use my Spin Touch when needed, I'll use my Color Q2X Pro 9 when I think it's necessary, and I'll use test strips when I need to use them, and I'll use the Taylor K2005 as my primary test kit because it's affordable, it's fast, it's accurate, and it's one of those things that I've been using for so many years that I'm kind of used to it. Not that I'm not used to the photometers. Those take longer, by the way. I should have mentioned that. But if you're using a photometer to do the readings, sometimes they have tablets and you have to crush them. That adds time to it. There's also a countdown, especially in the Pool Lab 2.0 when it's counting down for a period of time. The Color Q2X Pro 7 and 2X Pro 9 are very fast over the original generation. So if you're testing for the pH and you're using the phenol red in the tube, you put it into the Color Q unit itself, push the button, and you'll have the pH within like 2 or 3 seconds. So it's really fast. It does take a little longer if you're crushing a tablet for like the alkalinity or the cyanuric acid. So just note that the only photometer that's rapid is the Spin Touch for $1,000. It does 10 test factors in 1 minute. And the other ones are a little slower. So if you're going to run through all the test factors of the Color Q2X Pro 9, I would say it would take you about 6 minutes to do all the test factors. Your free chlorine, combined chlorine, pH, alkalinity, cyanuric acid, iron, and copper. And, that's one way you can do a full reading on a pool with the photometer. But just note that it's not something that is going to speed up your day. It's going to actually slow you down using that particular photometer. And I think if you want to go for speed, stick with the K2005 or test strips and then use the photometer to get an accurate reading at least once a month at the minimum so that you can, report it and you can compare it to what you're getting with your other kits. Because I really think this is a good way to make sure and verify that you're testing accurately. Are you reading the test strip accurately? Are you reading the K2005 reagents accurately? Well, one way to know is to do a test the following week or even the same time you're there if you have time with the photometer, and you'll be like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not reading that pH correctly. And it'd be a good idea to actually have the K2005 kit with the phenol red to get the pH and have your photometer and kind of compare them together to see how accurate you actually are in reading that reagent. And it'll probably make you a lot better at reading the reagent also by using a photometer. kind of like a little tool to kind of gauge where your eye is as far as the color. And I think it's going to enhance your pool route having a photometer. So I would say, yes, you would want to use test strips. You would want to have a tailor kit to K2005 or K2006. Then you would want to have one of these photometers I mentioned here to give you a spot-on reading so that, for some situations when you do need that really spot-on reading, you'll find the photometer test kits really handy. And they're all pretty affordable except with the Spin Touch I mentioned, so it's not a bad idea to invest in a Color Q2X Pro 9 and have it with you, and then invest in some of those reagents later. And test strips are affordable, and so is a Taylor test kit and reagents. So it's not like if you're using one, it's going to be unaffordable. You can actually get all of them, and it still would not break your budget in most cases. But that's a quick rundown of the test kits that I use out on my pool route. If you're looking for other podcasts I've recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. If you go to the banner, click on the podcast icon, and the drop-down menu will appear there for you. I have over, again, 1,300 podcasts for you to listen there. And if you're interested in the coaching program, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Real quick, if you're not using pool service software, try Skimmer free for 30 days at getskimmer.com/poolguy. Again, that's getskimmer.com/poolguy. Skimmer, everything you need to run your pool service business all in one app. Pool Service Pro, open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.